Your coworker takes credit for your work in front of your boss. Your client ignores every suggestion, then blames you when things fail. Your family member twists every conversation into criticism. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, faced worse. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 AD, commanding millions of lives and controlling territories from Britain to Egypt. But his power didn't shield him from difficult people. It magnified the problem. Every senator, general, and advisor had their own agenda. Every decision created enemies. His co-emperor and adopted brother, Lucius Verus, was incompetent and indulgent, forcing Marcus to shoulder the real burden of leadership alone. His own wife was rumored to conspire against him. His trusted general, Avidius Cassius, declared himself emperor in 175 AD, launching a full rebellion. Marcus couldn't fire these people or ghost them on social media. So at night, in his military tent during brutal campaigns along the Danube frontier, he wrote what we now call meditations. Never meant for publication, just private reminders to himself on how to stay sane while leading an empire full of people who frustrated, betrayed, and disappointed him daily. The core Stoic principle Marcus used was phantasia kataleptike, objective impression. The Greek breaks down as phantasia, meaning appearance or impression, and kataleptike, meaning graspable or comprehensible. It's the practice of seeing things as they objectively are, stripped of your emotional interpretation and the story your mind creates around them. Marcus wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." He wasn't being pessimistic. He was practicing premeditation, removing the shock value from difficult behavior so it couldn't hijack his emotional state. The behavior itself is just data. Your reaction to it is where you lose control. The psychological depth here is profound. We don't suffer from difficult people. We suffer from our expectation that people shouldn't be difficult. That expectation creates a gap between reality and our mental model, and that gap is where anger, resentment, and frustration flood in. Marcus closed that gap by accepting human nature as it is, not as he wished it would be. He writes elsewhere, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come from it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage or anger. Your sense of good and evil may be the same as theirs, or near it, in which case you have to forgive them." This is the shift from victim to observer. First technique, the objective description. When someone does something that triggers you, immediately strip your description of all interpretive language. Don't say, "My coworker sabotaged me," or "My client is being impossible." Instead, describe only the observable action in the plainest possible terms. The mechanics work like this. Catch yourself mid-reaction, pause, and ask what literally happened. Force yourself to describe it as if you're narrating a security camera feed. John sent an email at 3 p.m. containing these words. Sarah said this sentence in the meeting. My mother asked this specific question. No adjectives about intent, no interpretations about what it means. Here's a specific example. Your manager interrupts you 3 times during your presentation to your team, then presents a contradictory idea as if yours didn't exist. Your immediate reaction, rage, humiliation, thoughts spiraling about disrespect and being undermined. Instead, practice objective description. My manager spoke during my 3 sentences. My manager then described a different approach. That's all that happened. Notice what this does. It doesn't make the situation pleasant, but it removes the emotional accelerant. You're no longer fighting the story of betrayal and disrespect your mind wants to write. You're just dealing with the actual problem. Your manager has a different opinion and poor meeting etiquette. That's solvable. The story of betrayal is not. The outcome, you stay functional. After the meeting, you can have a direct conversation. I noticed you had a different approach during my presentation. Can we discuss how to handle competing ideas in team meetings so everyone gets heard? You're not suppressing emotion. You're preventing it from forming incorrectly in the first place by seeing clearly. Second technique, the nature examination. This comes directly from Marcus's framing. When someone behaves badly, instead of taking it personally, examine what in their nature makes this behavior inevitable, given their current understanding and pressures. Marcus wrote, They do wrong because they don't know any better, not as an excuse, but as a factual observation. The mechanics, when triggered, ask 3 questions. First, what does this person believe that makes this behavior logical from their perspective? Second, what pressures or fears are they responding to that I might not see? Third, given those beliefs and pressures, was this behavior actually predictable? You're building a causal model of their action, not judging its morality. Specific example: your client keeps rejecting your recommendations, implementing their own inferior solutions, then complaining when results don't improve. Your reaction: frustration at their stupidity, anger at wasted effort. Apply nature examination. What do they believe? They believe their industry experience trumps your methodology. What are they afraid of? Looking foolish if an outsider's approach works where theirs failed. Given those beliefs and fears, was this behavior predictable? Completely. They're not being difficult to spite you. They're protecting their self-concept in the only way their current understanding allows. This doesn't mean you accept poor outcomes. It means you now understand the actual obstacle, not their stubbornness, but their fear of professional inadequacy. That's what you need to address. The outcome? Strategic adjustment. You change your approach. Instead of presenting recommendations as corrections to their mistakes, you frame them as enhancements to their existing wisdom. You address the fear directly. What you've built already works. These changes just accelerate what you've started. Same recommendations, different framing, cooperative outcome. You worked with human nature instead of fighting it. Third technique, the impermanence frame. Marcus constantly reminded himself that everything, including difficult people and their impact on his life, was temporary. He wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life, now take what's left and live it properly." Applied to difficult people, this creates profound emotional freedom. The mechanics, when stuck in a toxic dynamic, explicitly visualize its endpoint, not hoping for it or trying to force it, just acknowledging that it will end. That relationship will change, that job will conclude, that person will leave, or you will. Even if it takes years, zoom out to the scale where this entire chapter is already past tense in your life story. Specific example: you have a family member who turns every gathering into criticism and comparison. Every holiday, same dynamic. Years of this. Your emotional reaction: helpless resentment because family is permanent. Apply the impermanence frame. In 10 years, will this exact dynamic still exist? No. Either they'll change, you'll change, circumstances will change, or the relationship itself will naturally shift. Even more, in 20 years, you'll barely remember the specific criticisms from this particular dinner. From that future perspective, today is already past. You're not trapped in an eternal now. You're moving through a temporary phase. This doesn't minimize the pain, but it breaks the feeling of permanence that makes the pain unbearable. The situation is difficult, yes, but it's not your entire life. The outcome: psychological breathing room. You attend the gathering, the criticism happens, but internally you're no longer crushed by it because you're holding the wider time frame. You can even feel compassion. This person, too, is temporary, probably acting from their own pain and limitations, and someday you'll miss aspects of them despite the difficulty. You're free while still present. Here's the common pitfall. People think stoicism about difficult people means passive acceptance, becoming a doormat, or suppressing your valid anger. Marcus Aurelius commanded armies and passed judgment on corruption. He wasn't passive. The misunderstanding is that removing your emotional reaction means removing your response entirely. That's not what phantasia kataleptike does. Objective impression removes the emotional static that clouds your judgment, the rage, the rumination, the catastrophic thinking. What it leaves is clear assessment and effective action. Marcus could order an execution without hatred or hesitation because he saw the necessity clearly. You can set a boundary, end a relationship, or confront a problem without anger poisoning your effectiveness. Actually, you can do it better without the anger. The other pitfall: thinking you need to understand and forgive everyone. Marcus's point wasn't moral superiority, it was practical effectiveness. Sometimes the objective description reveals someone is harmful. The nature examination shows they won't change. The impermanence frame helps you accept that leaving is the wise move. Stoicism doesn't demand you stay, it demands you see clearly enough to know when to go. Clarity is not cold. It's the warmest thing you can offer yourself because it's the only path to genuine peace and effective action. Marcus wasn't teaching you to accept abuse. He was teaching you to see reality clearly enough that abuse can't colonize your inner world, even as you deal with it externally. Bring this together. Marcus Aurelius spent decades surrounded by incompetence, betrayal, and hostility he couldn't escape. He didn't pretend it didn't hurt. He wrote about his exhaustion with difficult people constantly. But he discovered something profound. The difficult person's behavior is an external event. Your suffering about their behavior is an internal interpretation, and only one of those is within your control. When your coworker takes credit, practice objective description. What literally happened? When your client won't listen, practice nature examination. What do they fear? When your family member criticizes, practice the impermanence frame. How temporary is this? These aren't tricks to feel better, they're techniques to see clearly, which is the only foundation for wisdom. The modern application is direct. You're not a Roman emperor, but you face the same fundamental challenge. Other people will behave badly, and you must remain functional and sane anyway. Marcus wrote meditations for himself because no one else could give him permission to stay centered when everything around him was chaos. You have that same authority now. The question is whether you'll use it. 2,000 years separate us from Marcus's tent on the Danube frontier, but the feeling of being surrounded by difficult people who won't change, that's identical. His solution still works because human nature hasn't changed, not the difficult person's nature and not yours. What has changed is that you now have his techniques. The real question is what you'll do with them starting today. If this gave you something to think about, I'll see you in the next one.